recipes, if you don't care for them, just pass them on. They're gluten-free.
Oh, yay.
Bread and muffins there. And I also have a handout about self-publishing. And Jan and I have all of our books. Tanya, do you know Jan Schiferl?
Hi, nice to meet you. I have seen you before. I think you've waited on me before.
I'm waiting.
You're very good at what you do.
So, Jan, I think we should start out that you should introduce yourself and just talk about yourself for a couple of minutes. Totally improvisation, I know, but you got.
Sure. Well, so Greg and I live just 7 miles south of town. And some of you may have heard, we have the WJ Ranch. So we're the ones that have the public Christmas and the fall concerts. That's kind of our 2 big events that we do during the year. And then we do a lot we've got horses and cattle, and we've always done tour groups and that sort of thing. So we're real active in what we do there. And I'm actually, my life is basically a singer. I'm a singer at cowboy festivals mostly. Used to sing with the group Sweetwater for many, many years, if you guys remember that. But for the last 5 or 6 years, I've been on my own and doing a lot of traveling with that. And so I've always been kind of creative in different ways. But I think, I don't know how many years ago we did the Loretta book. And so I've known Loretta for a long time. And had the idea of I wanted to do I had a little story about my little mini pony. I have a little mini pony that's about this big. And I wanted to do that story for my grandkids. And I thought that I could maybe put that into a book form with not really any intentions of doing anything more than that. But then as I got going, I thought, this could actually be a book. And so I went to Loretta to see if she would help me get that done. And then that kind of morphed into a second book. And so I started a series, and what it is a series about the animals on our ranch. So that's what I hope to do. I've got a couple more ideas and want to make that kind of a series. And so that was my first toe in the water with what publishing could be like. And I've always had a couple ideas, even a couple more in the back of my head about, could we do something? My faith is very important to me, and just to get that out in a book form some way. And was it 3 years ago or more? This idea started out actually with 3 of us at the beginning. And God just had a way of twisting and turning that into Loretta and I. And this project's been super rewarding. It's just stories about people that we know, and we all have a story, right? And so it's been really awesome to be able to put down some stories about special people in my life that have gone through some hard things. We all have hard bumps in the road, and yet realize that God can use us no matter who we are and what we are. And so I guess for me, the reason that I wanted to do that book was for the purpose of getting those stories out, but also as the people that I wrote about, it was sort of my way to make a tribute to them. And I have some more in the back of my mind, and so I think maybe, who knows what God has in store. But it's been a great journey, and Loretta and I seem to work really well together, and I think that it's been fun, and I appreciated Loretta's expertise, so I'm kind of hopped on her way.
But we do work well together, and we have a synergy that I don't have on my own, and you probably don't either. So, and both faith is central to our life, and so we are trusting that God's at the center of this. Some of the things that came together for us, I don't think could have been anything else but for guiding and directing us. So, and if you need the whole backstory, we won't go into that today, but certainly God has been in it, and this book, you may not know that I published a Christian magazine in 2008 and 2009. And actually, I think I launched that in 2005 or 2006. And it was shortly before the economic crash in 2008. And that was all personal testimonies from the region. But when the economy tanked in 2008, I lost subscribers, I lost advertisers, and there was just no way to go forward. So I closed it down, and then recently thought perhaps God would give me this book format to bring that back, and that's sort of what this is, but it's more refined. There's a theme in the book that, I don't know if you've read the book, you haven't yet, so we'll make sure that you get to see it and check it out here. And sign it if you purchase a copy, but there's a whole theme in the book that really resonates with what we're experiencing today in not just the economy, but around the world as things are rapidly changing. And the things that have been familiar are becoming either unstable or they're already gone. And so this book, we're hoping, will help people find the purpose that God has for their life right now, because we know from studying the scripture that God has a purpose for each of us. That's why we were created. And we don't have to worry, we don't have to be afraid. All of our circumstances are unique, and God can use them in a very powerful way. So that's kind of the theme of that book. And when we get done here, I'm going to go through the self-publishing. Are you guys all interested in publishing your own book? Is that what brought you out today? Yeah, okay. Well, I don't want to bore you with stuff that you really don't care about, but I am going to go through most of what's on our outline. And then right at the end, I'm going to talk about collaborating on the book, because that was a brand new experience for both of us. We have both worked independently when it comes to creating things. And frankly, 3 years ago, when this whole idea started with 3 people, I'm like, I went home, this was our writer's group, and I went home, I said, God, I don't want to do this. And he just spoke to me and said, I want you to just hang in there. I have a plan. And I've learned, fortunately, in my old age, to how to be uncomfortable sometimes for more than a day or two, and how to really listen closely to the Lord. And that's kind of what brought us through this. And it's proving to be spiritually beneficial. And that's our whole goal, is to lift people up and build them up spiritually. But I'm going to talk a little bit about how to get started, your motivation, and then how to get your book idea into a solidly written plan. And you can follow along here. I'm just going to start out and tell you, it's self-publishing is not as easy as it used to be. There used to be more options, more companies to work with to get a book published. There used to be better compensation. Like Ingram Spark, I worked with them for probably close to 15 years. And initially when I started out, when you self-published a book, and Ingram Spark made them available to all the book sellers in the world. So when those people bought a copy of your book, Ingram Spark got a portion of the sale, and you did too. You still get a portion of the sale, but it's a lot smaller portion. And in some cases, I worked with a gal from Parker who's only getting 50 cents a sale. And that is atrocious. I was shocked. She told me that, and I had to log into her account to verify it. Because it used to be the kind of book that she published, you would get $2 or $3 a copy. When I first published this book in 2018, I was netting about $3 a copy for my part of the sale, which is not bad. It's not huge. You're probably not going to get rich as a self-publisher unless God blesses you with a unique and wonderful gift, but still, $3 is around 50 cents. So the compensation's lower, the service, Ingram Spark service is terrible, and Jan would verify that. That's why I got her set up on Ingram Spark too, because at the time that was the best option, but anymore you can't even call them. You are at the EOC, and I have had a couple of emails into them now, I know it's 6 weeks. I have not heard anything like that. And tried to set up a new account since we were working jointly. we were going to set up a new account that was separate from the one that we individually had, and then we set up a new account. I don't know if they're going through a transition or what, they're not saying that, but something's going on with them, and it's not beneficial to people who are wanting to publish a book. And bear in mind, there is an intense amount of competition out there because a lot of people want to self-publish, and they are. And so every time we publish a book, we did research. I think our title is fairly unique, but the content of our book will be similar to other books that are coming out right now. It's just part of the publishing world. Does that mean you shouldn't publish? That's a very interesting question because I thought about that. Like when I did my bread book, there are a gazillion bread books out there. But my book is unique and it has something to offer that the other books don't. So I needed to still publish it and work through the whole project. And so if you're concerned that your book will not survive the competition or whatever the case may be, you will have competition. But if you feel a real passion for publishing a book, you should publish it. Because you don't know how it will be used. And everyone, even though there are similarities, there's no reason to do so. I already mentioned you're probably not going to make a fortune. But if that's, had people come to me and say, I think I can make a lot of money publishing this book. And I am honest to say, that's probably not the case. Not to say it can never happen, but don't publish a book just to make money. You're going to be disappointed because it takes a lot of time to look together, time and effort. Depending on who you publish with, there are some companies, Lulu.com is a company where you can upload your book files and there is no setup fee. And within 24 hours, your book is ready for you to review. They are a great company. I actually am switching over to using them more than Ingram Spark because they also will list your book, make your book available to Amazon. And
so do they print it?
Yeah, they print it. And so Lulu.com is a really good option, and they have great customer service. But when you look at publishing a book, the books with the most success, I published this book because people were asking me about what I was doing to make this good read. And yes, I could explain it to them, but it was much better to have it in written form. And it really helped me to zero in on the process and refine what I was sharing and all of that. So that was providing a service. And maybe your book project is simply self-satisfaction. This gentleman in 2021, I worked with him for like 10 months to publish his memoir. It's a lot of information, but everybody who reads it to the last word. He had a passion for sharing his story. He was born with cerebral palsy, and yet he farmed all his life and was an insurance agent. So he had a very powerful story. And his books mostly sold regionally, but there is a possibility that some organizations, some CP organization will pick it up and use it somehow. He is not able to travel at this stage in his life. He's almost 80 years old, but they may be able to use it as a benefit to people who belong to their organization. Those are the kinds of things to keep in mind too. I also, the South Dakota Wheat Commission, purchased copies of my large bread book, and they have plans to do a baking day and provide a copy of the book to everybody who comes. That's a thing that could go on every year. You just don't know how the book could be used. But if it's something that is of value to people, that's what you want to focus on. And know your purpose. If you're going to inform people about something, share knowledge, entertain, think about why you purchase a book. And how does your book benefit the reader? That is the thing to have in mind before you ever start developing a plan or moving forward with a publishing project. And be sure you're passionate about your topic, because 10 months is a very long time to work on a book. And this gentleman, it really didn't dawn on me till we were almost done, because I did most of the work over the phone. But this gentleman could barely hold a pen. It's not like he could write notes or type up copy that he would then send to me and I would edit. That's a fairly easy process. So I had to interview him about every bit of information that he wanted in that book. I interviewed him, took notes, and then went back and worked through the notes. And then his wife had to help him read through it because he couldn't even pick up the papers in order to review it. She was invaluable when we got to photos, because just the idea of picking them up and labeling them and everything, he just couldn't do that. So make sure you're passionate about your book, because even for us, we started this book project in April, and we finalized it finally at the end of November. And this is not a huge book project, but we put a lot of time and thought into it, because we wanted the quality to be top of the line, and that's something you cannot rush.
So when you said you started in April, does that mean you already had like your ideas, you knew what you wanted to do, and were you starting writing it then, or?
We had the basic idea. What held us back was the third person who was to be involved in this had some family issues, had some health issues. And so although we had the seed of an idea, we never fleshed out exactly what this was going to be. And so we were kind of in limbo for 2 years. And didn't put a lot of thought into it, because we weren't sure what was going to happen. But by April, this third person said that she just would not be able to continue, and we both, as soon as we read that email from her, we simultaneously sent an email to one another saying, let's do this. So that was it. But then we had to figure out how to proceed without the third person, because what we had worked out to that point was including this third person, and now that has changed. So we got down to business, sorted out, met 2 or 3 times to flesh out the stories that would be included and figure out who was going to write what and get that part of it done. And then also set ourselves a deadline at that time. Because if you don't set a deadline, it doesn't mean, you're the only one who knows what that deadline is. But if you don't set a deadline, it's so easy to just float and think, well, I'll do that tomorrow, or I'll do that next week or next month. And pretty soon a whole year goes by and you haven't done anything. So we after April, when we finally figured out exactly more accurately what this was going to look like, then we started writing. And then you must go through a proof process. I hate the proof process. I'm a writer. I'm really not, I can edit, but I'm really not a good editor. I have Grammarly. If you're going to write, I recommend that you subscribe to Grammarly. I do the professional edition because I use it with all of my writing. You can do a less costly version of it too, but it will find stuff that you as a writer, that the writing and the editing are 2 separate activities, and you will never find in your own writing the things that Grammarly is going to find, I promise you. And even then, I gave Jan a hard time because I'm like a get her done kind of person, but she wanted to have an English teacher to do it. And I'm like, oh, well, we did it through Grammarly. Get the English person, because she still found quite a few things to correct. And Grammarly is not always right either. So better to have 2 people, 2 sources, and make them reliable sources. Don't be someone who's going to just want to tell you that this is fantastic writing and you don't have to change a thing. That's very rarely true. It's almost even the work that I do for magazines or whatever, sometimes they'll come out and I'll read it and I'll change that. And you can do that forever with a magazine article, but when you're doing a book, it's gonna be out there a long time. The magazine article's out there for quite a while, but it's not the same as a book. You will have, trust me, I know how many years you have to regret not going back and correcting and whatever. So take your time. Yes, do set a deadline, but know that if something really holds you up from that deadline, it's not the end of the world. And in our part of the world, we really felt like God was in this, and certainly we came together in the end. Our timeline fit what He wanted as well. So recommend that you do that. Be willing to revise your copy and your content. Nobody, I don't think there's any writer in the world who can just sit down and, it's easier for me to sit down and crank out a story now, but that doesn't mean that it doesn't need revision. Because when you write something, especially something like this, you should let the creative juices flow and then come back a day or two later, give it time to settle and get it out of your head and go to something else, because when you come back and look at it, you may see it differently.
When I was doing some children's writing, my philosophy was the first draft always stinks.
But it's something.
Yeah.
It's something to build on.
Mhm.
Yeah. So, but that's a good point. The first draft is almost always needs help. And I noted in there under the hard work section, be prepared for challenges. I know of a person who ran into some copyright issues after the book was already published. And fortunately, she was very wise. She came up with a way to get around it. It was something that, as far as she knew, was already resolved, but in the end, it wasn't. I also have one of the books that I worked with, Marilyn Kratz. We had, the book was at the printer and everything was going smoothly. And so she organized her book signing here. And then we got a message from the book company saying the printer broke down and your book is going to be delayed by a week. That was bad news. But there's nothing she could do. The signing was already scheduled, and although it was frustrating and it cost her some money to mail some books out, she got through it. Just know that the best laid plans may not come together. And don't be discouraged if you get a book and you're very passionate about it, you get it out and you think it's wonderful, and no one else seems to notice. Hang in there. It may not explode overnight, but give it time. And keep exploring your options to promote it and market it. Because I learned that too, that I think it was April of this year, I believe. I came up to do my first red baking demonstration here. And I had a few of these little books, and I'm thinking, these came out in 2018. And they're just the basics. Nobody's going to want this. Oh, I ran out. I had to mail some out too, because people did want the book. So keep that in mind. You never know just how that's going to work. When it comes to costs, I am fortunate that I have learned how to do my own interior design. And you can set a book up in Word, but I don't know, some book companies, I think Ingram Spark no longer accepts Word. You have to send it as a PDF, but I don't think they accept that anymore. You set it up in Word, and I don't know about Lulu. Ingram Spark now requires InDesign or similar graphic design software, simply because in the process of going from Word to PDF to their graphic system, there can be so many things that can happen, and it can cause your margins to be off. It can cause your font styles to be wonky. There's just a lot of things that can happen. So I would highly recommend that you find someone. I don't do much of that anymore, partly because I'm doing my own books. And I'm not sure of anyone right here locally that does, but I would encourage you to check with a book publishing company. You know, and here's the deal. There are book publishing companies in Sioux Falls, and they're sort of like the vanity presses that you hear about. All they're interested in is the bottom line, what they can make off from printing your book, and mostly that comes from you, not from your book sales. But it's okay to have, as long as you know that your content has been proofread and it's verified as quality, to go to a book publishing company or a printer. Printer will not be cheap, and I don't know about the book publishing company either. But have someone, a professional person, set up your book. They can do it faster than you ever could, and they will find all the little, you would be amazed at all the little technical details that go into getting that book set up so that it's proper, and it's very professional, and you don't have to worry about any glitches along the way as far as printing goes. But if the vanity press or the printer sets up your file, all you need from them is the file. Then you can go to England's Park or another company with that file. You do not have to have that printer, because printing with a local printer, I hate to say this, I love the printing industry, and I like to support local printers when I can, but they cannot publish your book for the same cost as Lulu or Spark, who are print-on-demand companies. They just can't do it. And so you really can't. The other thing is, if you go with a local printer, you're going to end up with 1,000 books in your living room that you may never sell a whole 1,000 books. I don't know, but it is possible to have them do it. But I would go with a professional for the graphic design. And if you go with Ingram Spark, there's a $49 setup fee, and that's just for them to get the book into their system and whatever they do with it. But Lulu has no setup fee, and so I like that, and I do not see any difference in the quality of the book. So any place you can save money, that would be a good idea. When the book is published, just keep in mind that you probably want to order. The big issue right now with Lulu or Ingram Spark, you can order one book or 100 books, and per book price will be the same. That is a real advantage for self-publishers. But the proof of the shipping is crazy right now. So figure that into your costs. And I would say if you publish a book, you want to order at least 25 of those books. And the average cost, it's going to vary a lot, because it depends on your cover, it depends on how many pages you have, the complete size of the book, just a lot of variables in there. But it's going to cost you at least $3 a book to buy it, and once you get it to a place where it's ready to buy. So keep that in mind. If you order 25 books, you've got $75 for shipping, which is probably $20 or $25 itself. Keep that in mind. That's a cost that there's no way out of it. And you will want to have books on hand. If you have to mail your book, once in a while, it depends on who you get behind your cover. It also depends on the size of your book. These books are not going to ship for any less than $3.49 a book. Media mail is $3.49. Doesn't matter what size you get. And we have been unable to ship a couple of these books for a little bit less. But it depends on who's behind the counter and how they figure the postage on their book. That's another cost to keep in mind when you're publishing a book and getting it out there. Promotion, I have always tried to keep my promotion costs low because I don't have a lot of money. And I have not ever found that spending a lot of money, I advertised in the newspaper one time, and I did not see the return. Facebook is good, YouTube is good. I do have a website, person who does websites just for book publishers. Contact me if you want. The name of the company is Wild Ink. And, pardon me?
What was that?
Wild Ink. And for $20 a month, that is the best deal you can find anywhere. And it's easy to manage, because you have to do any updates or post whatever you want on there. But that's the best deal I found. I cannot afford anything else.
So what exactly is Wild Ink? Do they have their own website?
They don't, I don't know if she has a website. It's been long enough since I set mine up that I'll have to get, I know I can get the contact information. Send me an email and I'll get it to you. Yeah, and which they were easy to work with, and it easily pays $20 a month is enough for the website. So keep in mind that you may have to travel to do book signings and have other kinds of expenses. When I do book signing for the bread book, I usually make 3 or 4 loaves of bread. It's not a big expense, but it's still an expense. But we'll add to that promotion. And I have considered taking my bread books to like a farm show or something. Get permission from the boss home. Or I can do that. And I don't know what, I'm sure that would be at least $500 to have a booth. And then you would have to have enough books on hand. It's quite an investment up front. So, and I'm not sure I'm that ambitious. You're welcome. So now we've talked about all the, before you ever start to write, but I would highly recommend that you have a written plan to get your book put together and published. And make deadlines part of that when you start. Again, that's up to you, you don't, but it does help you. Like Jan and I were working together, we set some initial deadlines and then we updated. I have been sick a lot this fall. Have this sinus issue from all the dust and the dryness. I'm getting better, but so I was not really able to keep up with our initial deadlines. So we reevaluated. And the thing that is great about deadlines is it allows you to see day to day. Are you ahead? Are you behind? Are you way behind? Are you going to be able to meet a deadline at all? It really does help. You really need that. And it's also encouraging when you say, yeah, we're on track and I think we could do this. And if I take an extra day to devote to this, I know we can do this, that kind of thing. It really is worthwhile to keep that. If you have a broad topic when you start, it's all right to say, you know what, I think I need to pare this down and zero in more on a specific aspect of this. I actually need to sit down and make this an ebook that people can buy because there's not a lot of folks out there who have the hands-on how to go about that. I need to do more with the actual graphic, with setting up in design and doing some of those things. There are some books out there that are for professionals who went through 4 years of school, and it doesn't make any sense to me that I can do it this way. So anyway, I need to follow my own advice. But keep in mind, when this gentleman was writing his memoir, as we got further into it, I would say to him, are you sure you need to include this? Because you're getting a lot of copy here, and we're going to end up, first I said, we're going to end up with 200 pages. Well, he wasn't worried about that. We got 250 pages here. Well, that's okay. He didn't really understand a 300-page book is expensive. And these books retail for $30. Not a lot of people want to invest $30, even for a really good book. So keep that in mind when you're doing a book, that you want it to be affordable. And actually, 300 pages, especially if you're doing a memoir, 300 pages is probably understandable. But if you're doing a self-help book or something, you know, the book like we've done, 300 pages is really too much. You don't need to do that all in one book. You probably have 2 books there. 150-page book is more common. And so once you decide what your topic is, and your theme is, and you have the basic idea, break that down into like, what are your chapters? And you do not have to have a specific title, just put the content down there. Like the first chapter is going to be, don't fool yourself, it's not that easy to publish self-publish your book anymore. That's the first chapter. Then you flesh that out. Second chapter, just get those basics down. And then start anywhere. You do not have to start with the first word of your book. Start writing what is most clear to you. And then maybe that's even the ending. This is the ending I want if you're writing fiction. And then come back and make it happen. That is really a good way to start because it makes it easier for you to begin your project. And I think sometimes when you start writing what you do know, the rest of it comes together. That's kind of what we found. What is it that we do know? So let's do that. And then just the next step and the next step. Keep really good files, especially on your computer. And binders work really well for physical copies. I try to have a, like when we had our deadline set out, I kept a copy of that in the binder so I could quickly look at that anytime when I was working on stuff and know where I was and what I needed to finish. I could check off, this is done, this is done. Keep it in front of you, but keep all of that organized because the last thing you want to do is spend a lot of time looking for things. I have done that it's been quite a few years since I learned how to organize my stuff, but there's nothing worse than wasting your time because you can't find what you need when you're looking for it. And try to avoid writing when you feel like it. I've learned this through all the magazine and content writing that I've done. Some days I don't feel like writing, but I go sit in that chair and I shut everything else out. Yes, I need to vacuum, but I can do that when I'm tired. I'm not going to be able to write this well if I vacuum first. Set your goal for that day for what you want to write. The other day I wrote 4 articles in one day. I don't usually do that, but I'm off next week. So I got my assignments done ahead of time and don't remember what to do, just block everything else and get it done. Create a schedule and do what you can. Sometimes when you sit down, I don't have this issue with most of my writing because I have a specific topic I'm writing about. And sometimes I don't know how the story starts, but I know there's a portion of it I can get started with. And sometimes I'll do the easy part of the story. Sometimes I'll do the hard part first, depending on what else is going on. But do something, write something. Maybe you don't hit your word goal or much of anything for the day, but do something. Just do something. And we already talked about start whatever is most clear with you. And then as you work through the different phases of your project, go back to your summary and your plan for what the whole book's about, make sure you're on track. You must have an ISBN. That's what allows the library to catalog your book. No bookseller will take your book these days if you do not have an ISBN. That's going to cost you about $55 through ISBN.org. Keep a record of it where you can find it. It's not going to disappear. And then you're going to get a digital barcode graphic with it and keep good track of that too, because you may need that again down the road. Just don't lose track of it.
So do you need that before you even write your book?
No, you can do that towards the end. Yeah. When you get ready to do the graphic design, you can't do the cover. You can't finish the cover without it. So that's the stage. So yeah, you're going to go actually do your whole content. And the ISBN also occurs on a copyright page on your interior, but that can be dropped in right at the last minute. We talked about proofreading, don't skip that part or rush through it. Your covers are really important. I don't consider myself the best cover designer, but between the two of us, we were pretty happy with this cover design. But we started out, I designed an entirely different cover for this book initially. And then we're both looking at it and thinking, I'm not sure I'm happy with that. That's okay. That is the point to change. If you're not happy with it, don't think you'll get happier, because you probably won't. And do look at other book covers. We got this idea from a book that Jan had, because we liked the black, but it was difficult to wrap it around to the back. So this is how we resolved that issue. And the photo is a stock photo. I didn't put that in here, but write down canstock.com. canstock.com. You can purchase one image at a time from this company. A lot of stock photo companies force you to subscribe. I don't need a subscription. I use some stock photos for some of the safety writing that I do, but I don't need a photo even every week. And so when we were looking for an image, Jan found one. Know that what you find on the internet, two things. It's very likely copyrighted somewhere. And if you download it from the internet, the quality is not going to be good enough for a cover. That has to be high resolution. And so you really need to have a good source for your photos, or you're taking photos. Yeah, do your own thing. But make sure that you do some research on your cover, that you do the best job you can, because it's important. It draws people in. We thought this was really eye-catching, and it makes people curious about the dandelion. How does the dandelion fit in? So, and then Ingram Spark is print on demand. I love print on demand companies because you, as I said, you can buy one book at a time if you want to, but they're not as user-friendly as they used to be. Amazon is not either. You can publish your book through Amazon. There's no setup fee, and they probably will even provide you with a free ISBN. But then you cannot take that same file and take it to Lulu because they don't agree on the ISBNs. So the best way to manage your ISBN situation with any book, just go pay the $55 and you can go wherever you want to. You're not tied into any company. And then I listed some information about those different companies there. 48-hour books. Jan brought this to my attention. This is a book printer. They're not a print-on-demand company, so they're not good if you just want. I think if you order less than 50 copies of the book, you're going to really pay a high price per book. Their shipping costs are very good. Their customer service is incredible, and just as the name implies, if you upload a file that's ready to go and you don't need to make any changes, within 7 days at the most, you probably can have books on your step. They are fast and great quality. That's where we ordered these books. But if you just need a couple books, they're not the ones to go with. That's why our book is also available through Lulu. And these guys do not make your book available to Amazon, Barnes & Noble, all of those companies. So depending on your needs, there are different printers that can help you with that. So, and then realizing a profit, don't look for big profits right off the bat. Not that you won't have any, but, and be willing to, I think since I was in high school, I've had this insane idea that I could publish books. I once took a little booklet and cut it all apart and redid it in a notebook to suit myself. My mother thought it was just absolutely terrible because I cut the book up, but I had the bug way back then. I tried to stop publishing books about 6 or 7 years ago. In fact, the first time Jan and I ever met, she had a book idea, and I said, well, Jan, I think you have a good idea, but I'm not doing that anymore. Ha
I shook her.
Yeah. And so, fortunately, I've gotten better at graphic design. That is not my best writing, it's my key talent. However, I have learned sometimes the hard way with the book publishing. So I guess I'm in it now, and I'm enjoying it. But if you plan to start publishing books and you want to get into the game, just be prepared to stick out the rough stuff, because there's some ups and downs. It's not the ivory tower thing that people think, oh, you're a book publisher. Yes, and that's why I color my hair. Because it never used to be white. But it's challenging. But if you really have a passion for it, it's worth it. So I've done all the talking. Do you have questions?
You touched on it, ebooks. Have you done any, or have you considered going that route?
Ebooks. I converted this book to an ebook, and I need to do this one. Partly I did not do it because of the cost of it. One time I tried to convert a book myself to an ebook, and it was such a nightmare. I won't ever try it again. It costs about 60 cents a page for Ingram to create your book, to convert your book from print to ebook. It's worth every nickel because it's just a whole different ballgame. So, and I probably will consider getting into ebooks. Right now, I am finishing a contract. I have 3 years to go. I signed a contract with the safety group in Omaha to do articles for them for 5 years. And so I need to follow through with that. And when I get done with that, ebooks may be, like this may be a good ebook to start with because I get the basics down and then I can build on that and turn it into a print book down the road. But I really don't have the time to do a print book right now, and I want to do a good job. So the one benefit of ebooks, and one reason I would do this as an ebook, part of it is a service to people. There are a lot of people who are interested in self-publishing, and I should be willing to share what I know. The other part of it is it's not going to cost me very much. So I'm not going to order books. I don't have to have them on hand. I can promote it the same as I do any of my other books. And actually, when your ebook sells, you get a greater portion of the sale than with a print book. I think that's kind of weird, but that's how it works. I'm thinking, I spoke to someone this morning that said the book publisher probably has so much in inventory, and now when interest rates are high, that's why they're coming back on the compensation, because they're struggling to make it all work too. So, but yeah, ebooks might be a good way to get started if you have an idea and you don't want to invest a lot of money. The only bad thing is if you do an event like this, you don't have anything fine, but still, it's the main thing is to provide the service and the value to the reader. So that's a good question. And I probably would go through Lulu if I did an ebook, just because their customer service is so much better. I'm really disappointed in the Ingram part. I don't know what they're doing. They're sure not helping me. So if you do work on a book, I will be happy to meet with you for any questions that you have. But I need to be upfront about the fact that I am we have plans for another book. My husband and I are co-authoring a book. I need to do a gluten-free cookbook, so I am booked up for it. So,
Is there a writers group in town?
there is
And
not
after
currently
meets.
a writers group in town.
There used to be.
Yeah, there used to be. We should think about it.
Yeah.
We had a writers group too. That's where this third person came in. And when the pandemic came, that all the way we just couldn't meet. And so we could think about a writers group.
And if you establish a writers group, since we've done it before, how often do you meet?
I would not meet more than once a month.
And then everybody's kind of working on their own writing and then getting together to kind of share portions of things they
The
read.
way we used to do it would be to have each person who came to the writers' meeting to have questions or some information to present. And as long as your group isn't too big, for a while, we had 6 people in our writing, and that was before you came in. And that got to be kind of a long meeting. 2 hours to me is long enough. And we always try to meet during the day, which I know leaves some younger people out. But for us, we don't like to get out at night, especially during the winter. But we'll think about that.
There's a little group that I don't get to join it very often because they're around Valentine. Yvonne Hollenbeck is her name. She's actually a cowboy poet. And she has a little writing group out there, and I've joined them a couple times. But one of the things they do is they'll bring a topic and they'll spend 15, 20 minutes and they have to all write it's like a writing exercise.
Oh.
And they'll critique each other's things and kind of help each other that way. And I think I would just share the one thing that I have learned in the last probably 4 years for me, because I've always liked to dabble in writing, but I never did a lot of it until I sort of got into a habit of it, which made all the difference in the world. And it was just by happenstance. Hi, guys. Hi.
Sorry for late.
Oh,
good.
Are you the publisher?
I know, yes, I am.
Well,
We've published a little bit before, but we wanted, interested in doing more publishing.
Very good.
I'm Loretta, this is Jan. What did you finish? You were just talking about writers group.
Well, this is good for you because I'm going to tell you what I learned about writing the last few years.
Uh-huh.
So I always had done a little bit, but not on a, Loretta's I would call her a disciplined writer. I was more of a hobby writer. And at the beginning of 2020, when everything kind of went goofy, that was my first writing experience when I told myself that on Sunday nights, I was going to make an email group and I was going to write out some encouraging words every Sunday night and I was going to be faithful about this group. Well, that group grew and I'm still to this day writing. Now, every Sunday night I have to sit down and come up with something to write about. That evolved into a online devotion that I got asked to do where now every Friday and Saturday morning I have to write a 2-minute devotion that's read online. And all of a sudden I have these things that I'm doing weekly. And I'm finding that because I've done it more and on a more regular basis, it comes easier to me than it ever did before. And it's just because I'm disciplined myself into writing. And so I just encourage you to just start writing stories all the time and sit down and, tell yourself once a week, I'm going to, have this much done. But it's like I think it's a mental thing. I think that the more that you write, the easier it becomes. And this is a funny story, but 2 weeks ago, the neighbor lady stopped over and said, she's a sweet lady that always brings her garden produce all year. She said, could you do me a big favor? Sure. You're pretty good at rhyming. Could you turn my Christmas letter into a rhyme? Here's a 2-page Christmas letter about, our daughter visited and my cousin Elmer had and I'm thinking to myself, oh goodness. And yet I sat down and within 2 hours I had a letter for her. And I couldn't have done that 3 years ago. I absolutely could not have done that 3 years ago. So I think it just, because writing begets writing. And so I just encourage you to just start, no matter what it is. It doesn't have to all be the topic that you're writing about. It's just a habit in getting you, all of a sudden you're using the thesaurus and you're doing things that just kind of expand your ability to write.
And eventually guess that's how you learn to play the guitar.
Well, yeah, right. You just do it. It's not going to come to you through osmosis. Darn it.
Well, I'd like to say something. I have found writing to be a healing process.
Absolutely.
And Loretta knows a little bit about my story, but I've been journaling almost every day for, I can't even say when exactly I started, but it would have been in my 30s and I'm 73. So it's just, It's my talk with God time. It's any little struggles that come up between my husband and I. It doesn't matter what it is. It gets down in writing. And it usually is something that I start to then, because I am talking to God, I start to feel a peace about. And it's just, when I was first struggling with sexual abuse and not knowing how to handle that, and really crushed by a marriage that was not a good marriage, I went to therapy, a small therapy group. And in that group, they talked about the value of journaling. And I had always written, school, I was an artist, but then I really got into writing too. So journaling became really easy. And it also became like a healing. I mean, it really, my whole life has been a healing.
That's good to know. Yeah, and that is proven to be a good way to work through some struggles. So thank you for sharing. So questions, I have a handout here about self-publishing. If you would like one.
I'm not
Okay.
going to be
All right.
clear. I am journaling, I'm very interested, but I'm coming here to buy a book. No, I
Oh,
can't.
I'll get to my part. Any other questions?
We came late, so we can find out. We were also interested in the publishing process going from concept to actually, or it's
Right.
holding it in your hands, and I'm sure it's
That's-
discussed in that.
Yes, I outlined in there, but feel free to contact me for, and I also mentioned that I do publish, but my publishing schedule is really booked up for at least a year. And so, and I don't work as many hours as I used to, so I don't take on a lot of new publishing requests. So, but I am more than welcome to I'm more than happy to sit down and discuss, where you're at, what you need, and help you find the resources.
And when we're far from needing an immediate, anything immediate, we're more interested in learning just.
Right, and that explains how to get your plan developed and then start working through it. But if you have questions about it anyway, feel free to contact.
Okay, well, thank you so much.
Happy to do that. I've had a lot of people who helped me along the way, so I'm happy to help.
Ours was done through, her and I, she illustrated and we collaborated on the kind of a children's book about moving from walls to Yankton. And it had questions on the back, we had the storyboards out and planned it, and then we just published through Costco.
Through Costco?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I didn't even know that.
So we took her artwork and we created, we created PDFs and put it in order, and then they had a book, just like you publish a photo album for your family.
That's the first letter book. Do you remember the first letter book was done through Schiferl?
Yeah,
I made copies of that for our cover Christmas, and thinking that I would just make so many and my grandkids would like it and a couple of people might like it and that'd be good. Well, when the demand got more, and at Schiferl they were like $10 a piece, right? I thought, And so then that's when I had to get some help to, do something a little different. But yeah, that's exactly. And actually, that's a great way for you to see some results, right? At least to.
Oh, yeah,
to start, to see
People
what it
read it.
is, and then you can
People read
decide
it.
from there, is this something I want to invest
And
in?
if you are an illustrator, I'd like your card. Because I've had people come to me and they need an illustrator.
We took, basically, she was into doing paper people. Remember your paper people? We must have had, she must have had 100 paper people that she
Oh,
did.
wow.
And so,
I was really young.
yeah, so we basically,
She was young. She was young.
Yeah.
How old are you?
I'm 9.5.
9.5.
I can't hire you then.
But she had a few paper people, and we basically took photographs of them, and I've got some desktop publishing experience, and we basically cut them out and then collaged them around the text. So for paper people, you know, enlarging and making some, that's basically how we did the.
Cool. Very fun. Yeah, well, you've done a lot more than a lot of people already.
Yeah, I've worked at some publishing houses and some print shops and things like that.
That's very helpful.
Yeah, for sure.
It's back to a long time, but in my other jobs in public and community development planning, I mean, this work is, I use it every day. So this is good for much more, but yeah, the art of really doing another book, and we've talked about doing some more, and her siblings would like to do some publishing too.
You are busy too.
Yeah, well, that's why we live in Yankton now.
Very good.